We also have the National Governors Association, Governor Markell from the state of Delaware has taken this up as their priority for this year. And we at ACL have been meeting with the NGA around how we support and further this. So, I mean, employment is just continues to be a hot topic. For those of you who aren't aware, we funded a small, very small community of practice grant to ICI, University of Massachusetts, Boston, to expand our support of you in your employment efforts. We didn't have enough money to give everybody the employment partnership grants. We had 36 states expressed interest in it. And we wanted to take what we're learning through the technical assistance projects as well as the State Employment Leadership Network and bring that effort together in terms of building a community of practice through the ICI with non-funded states. So if that is of interest to you, I don't know, I shouldn't speak out of turn in terms of where they are around identifying the states, but if that is of interest to you, please let us know, let John Butterworth at ICI know that you're interested in the community of practice. We are, we are looking to the states who've done some of the work in terms of establishing those relationships and getting those MOUs that you had to get in order to apply for the grants, which we heard was, 50% of the battle. But we're really looking for states that are committed and have a level of readiness to engage in an employment first conversation and building this community of practice. We also put out and have awarded a small grant on a community of practice for family support that went to the NACDD state directors and in partnership with HSRI and university centers and SABE and I think ASAM. They had like 5 or 6 collaborators on this to again further the work that we started, the wing spread conversation around how do we build best practice in rethinking family support, not as a program and not as a funding stream, but as inherent and built into everything that we're doing, including Medicaid, in supporting families. So they will be moving forward and identifying states to work with on a best practices basis in that community practice as well, and that will create opportunities for again that dissemination of information and what are we learning. On internal administrative things, many of you have been engaged on the PPR development, on the performance measurement conversation. We're getting closer. It's taken a lot longer than we hoped, but we're getting closer. I think we have we really have 2 very strong umbrella measures with a bunch of pieces underneath, one output and one outcome for each of those that really focus on what the councils do, right? Which is system change and advocacy and training and leadership development, and it's focused on both people with disabilities and family members, equally balanced. And I'm really happy with where we're going on that, and that should also help with some of the burden issues that we've talked about related to the 480 pieces of useless data that we collect from you right now. We do have to go through OMB to get all of that approved, and obviously some of those things will shift, but we're glad that that continues to move forward, and are looking at then how do we feed this into the larger GEPR measure. So we're close on that. We are going to publish regs. I know that's earth-shattering 12 years later. Because the statute did tell us in 2000 to publish them within 180 days. But who's counting? So we are going to put out a final reg. I can't say a lot about what will be in it. There will be a couple of areas where we so vehemently disagreed with what the previous administration had done. We are actually going to have to do a notice of proposal linking because we can't publish based on what was previously published. But we'll have about a 90% completion on the reg, and we'll actually have a final reg, guys. Instead of trying to work off of regulations that are not tied to the current statute. Which, again, I think will be helpful to everyone in terms of clarity, especially in these conversations with state governments, issues around lobbying, issues around funding and use of resources. And so that is forthcoming and is now getting moved onto the regulatory calendar. And as soon as I can give you more information on the dates and timing, I will let you know on that. The last thing that I wanted to just actually, it's a good jumping off place for a dialogue, propose. We've been having some conversations internally around how do we keep the connections between our staff and the networks, the connections across the networks to each other. One of the things that I think has been very beneficial about the last couple of years, both in terms of the Envision work and the self-advocacy summits, is that it's allowed us to be out in the field, and it's provided support and resources for you guys to work collaboratively across states, which we don't always do, right? We either meet in like groups of, here's the councils getting together for the council conference, and here's the P&As getting together for the P&A conference, and whether it's technical assistance or the national conference, we do it that way, or, we're connected by states, but we don't, on a regional basis or on a cross-network basis, have a lot of conversation. And we felt like that was one of the unintended, maybe intentional, benefits of what we did with the self-advocacy summits, as well as some of the Envision work. So one of the proposals that our staff came to us with, and you were going to be hearing Donna's getting a preview because this is on my agenda for my next Donna Kurt George meeting, is how do we engage the network on whether this is a good idea or not, is whether we, especially given all the travel and conference restrictions and everything that everybody is facing, do we look at the establishment of a rotating schedule for some kind of regional conferences? Now, for those of you who are from the Western states, this is going to sound a little familiar because you're already doing it. The Western states, regions 9 and 10, every 2 years of their own volition, get together and have across all 3 parts of the network a regional conference. I've gone out to it the last 2 conferences and found it, at least the feedback that we've gotten from the folks who participated in it, to be a very valuable use of time in terms of, again, kind of that question around, my state's Medicaid programs looks like this, what does yours look like? And when we start doing that on a regional basis, we find more similarities in the ability to address it across all parts of the network on a smaller scale than we're able to do when we have 55 or 56 entities all in one room of the same kind. And that's not to say that we don't need to continue to do the TA stuff and the national conferences, but we were looking at, would there be value in some kind of regional structure, especially now that under the Administration for Community Living, we have regional offices. Now, what that role of the regional offices is going to be with our network is still unclear for a whole host of reasons. But there is interest in engaging on a regional level and potentially putting together meetings of a couple of days that would cut across the DD councils, the PNAs, and the university centers with 8 to 10 states involved, again based on the federal region areas.
There used to be such a thing as the Commissioners Forum that brought in everybody. Did that go away?
Well, so they did it. So what happened with the Commissioners Forum is that when I first came in, the staff had set aside funding for a Commissioners Forum in the first year that I was here. And we looked at it, and I talked to a lot of you, and I talked to a lot of people, and everybody went, ugh, do we have to do a Commissioners Forum? It hadn't been perceived as a good use of time and resource because, frankly, getting 160 entities representation all in one place, everybody coming to DC, nobody felt like that was a great reason. So we did the Envision instead. So we said, okay, forget that. We're going to take that budget, we're going to parse it down, and we're going to do 5 regional meetings. And we took staff out into the field instead. And that's what we did with the self-advocacy as well. I mean, we did 9 summits over 2 years and got to every state and territory, and felt like the feedback that I got from staff and from the field, if anybody here feels differently, I welcome that critique, but that was a more effective level of engagement than throwing, 500 people into a room in DC, you know.
I'm from Region 7, and we used to have regional meetings, and I mean, ours were, you know, just the 4 states, but they could be large. They were so, honestly, they were so great because not only did they have the network there, but also because we had it at a place where the representative from CMS came, Aging, Department on Aging, so we had access to all those, and they got to know the councils. They could tell us things. I mean, that is who our CMS director, our Medicaid director calls this person.
Right.
And we got to hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to say, what was going on. I mean, if there's a way to do it budgetarily, I highly recommend regional meetings.
So here's what we would be thinking before we get to the horse too far out of the barn, because again, with limited resources, and what I'm going to be looking for a sense of trying to get from all of you guys, because it won't work unless we have interest from everybody. AIDD would be in a position to kind of fund the central expenses, right? So we would take care of the meeting space and kind of the logistics of pulling together that kind of a meeting. But the network entities would be responsible for your own staff travel and expenses. I mean, we're just not, like I said before, we're at the federal level, we're pretty much remote in terms of supporting people to get to meetings. So it would be very different than what we were able to do with both Envision and self-advocacy in terms of kind of supplementing what you guys put on the table. So in order for it to work, we'd have to have a fairly high level of commitment from the network. But what we would be looking at is, you know, 4 or 5 of these meetings, probably starting with putting 2 regions together, again, just because of economies of scale. Not unlike what the West Coast folks do, where they put 9 regions, 9 and 10 together. ACL has 5 regional offices that already kind of have those natural divisions. And yes, to your point, that would allow us to invite the CMS regional representative, the Older Americans regional representative, the ACF, you know, Child Care Head Start regional representatives, as well as our staff, to engage with the feds, as well as address those regional and state issues and kind of do some of that best practices sharing. So, you know, we are seeking your feedback on that as an idea, you know, that's something that I'll be asking you guys to work through, Donna, and letting us know what you think. And you'll need to drag your partners along on it. Because that's, you know, the challenge that both the university centers and the PNAs are going to have in terms of their budgeting around travel is limited. And, you know, that is what it is. So.